Survivor of Love Island.
A survivor of Love Island. Were there any?
Were there any, yeah. Do you ever feel like joining in?
I don't know. I just get this sort of, visual picture of arriving back to 39 Main Street, Dundrum, County Down, to my good Irish Catholic mother and saying, "Mum, this is Sophie."
I don't think so.
Never going to happen.
No. You've been doing stand-up. You went back to your roots.
Back to stand-up. There's only so many sun-kissed islands and women in bikini that you can actually take, Michael, so...
But is there a kind of compulsion to do it, do you think? Once a stand-up, always a stand-up?
I think there is. I think that once you've got that thing of just going out in front of an audience and having a quarter of an inch of microphone cable between you and 1,000 people and saying, "This is what I think's funny, what do you think?" Which makes no sense to anybody else. but to me, that's where it's at. And so earlier this year, we went back and we did a full UK tour. And we filmed it for DVD, and that's out on Monday the 27th. Obviously, if it was a lesser chat show, I'd be plugging the fact that it's out on Monday the 27th. But the fact that it's this show and it's a quality show, I wouldn't even dream about mentioning that at all.
Is it more difficult to actually do, as a stand-up now, to do the kind of stuff which stand-ups do, which you do, certainly, which are the stuff... I mean, so much PC around nowadays, for one thing.
Yeah.
But an important area, maybe, is the one about race and about religion, particularly. And I mean, you're somebody coming from Ireland, as you do, your background. You've been well-versed in this. But is it more difficult, this is my point nowadays, in the religious front, particularly, to be funny? Are there certain things, like the Muslim, you can't make fun of?
I don't know. I think that one of the weird things about being from Northern Ireland and actually going back out on the road after maybe 5 or 6 years is that things have completely changed. And that it used to be people from Northern Ireland who were blowing up things. And the fact now that everyone loves us now, and sort of the Muslims have become the new Irish, and the fact that it is true, and it's the fact that, it used to be us being brought into that special room at Heathrow Airport, and they put on the marigold dishwashing gloves, and you look around, and there's no sink. And you kind of realise that it's all kind of changed.
So you don't feel inhibited in that sense?
I don't think so. I think what was weird about it was, if I hadn't come from Northern Ireland, I don't think you could do material about the way things have changed. I think that if I had just been walking on stage and saying, "Let's do some material about, what's going on and the bombings here," I think that'd be very, very difficult.
So it's the point of reference that you
I think if you've got
basically
a point of reference, you get away with stuff.
And yours too. I mean, it's well known that your father was murdered by the paramilitary loyalists in a sectarian killing. And I suppose that, again, I mean, that gives you... It's an awful thing, not a springboard, but it gives you kind of a reason, doesn't it, for doing stuff like this?
I don't think it gives you a reason. I think it gives you a licence. I think that whenever I was starting out and whenever we were doing the comedy club in Belfast for the first time and things were still pretty much full on there, and, it got to the point where, in a couple of gigs, they were very... See, the weird thing about the IRA is that you actually don't know who the IRA are. Well, you kind of know some of them, because they're now in government. But, the ones that aren't politicians, shall we say, you don't know. And so, whenever someone comes up to you in a club after you do a gig and they say, "We're not impressed with that," and you kind of think, because of what happened to my father and because, he was innocent and because you feel you've right on your side, then I think it's very easy to turn around and say, "Look, come on. Are you seriously going to pop a comedian? Is that where we're at? Do you really want to make me that famous over a joke?" And, then they look at you and you look at them and they don't say anything and you don't say anything and you hold your stare and you hold your ground and they hold their ground and they turn around and leave and then you go... So I think you can.
You can, and you do. Let's talk about other stuff that you've done apart from that, because you've also been in front of 72,000 people at Old Trafford.
Yes.
Eh?
Playing football very badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat the Cat.
You're a brave man.
I was a brave man. What was weird about that was the whole Soccer Aid thing, which the Robbie Williams gig. And the weird thing about it was that there was myself and Alistair Campbell. Alistair Campbell was one of my defenders. And as they say in Ireland, Alistair could not kick snow off a rope. He is just absolutely rubbish. And we ended up playing a warm-up game, and this is how bad we were. We actually were 6-0 down at half-time against Scotland. And it was a Scotland old boys team. And I was coming in, and I was just totally, you know, decimated that I'd let in 6 goals.
You're the goalkeeper.
I was the goalkeeper, and Ruud Gullit. Ruud was very supportive, and Ruud was like, Patrick, of course, it does not matter. This is a fun game. We will sort out the system in the second half. I will talk to Alistair. I will change things around. It will be fabulous in the second half. And as we're walking off, it's at Craven Cottage, and there's these 3 guys in Fulham outfits, all sort of scratching their head and looking out on the pitch. And I said, what are they talking about, Ruud? He went, Patrick, this, of course, does not concern you. We will sort out the football. It'll be fine. So we came out for the second half, and I only let in 1 goal in the second half, which I thought was great. And I'm walking off the pitch, and I said to Ruud, I said, look, could you tell me what those guys were talking about at half-time? And he said, I can tell you now, Patrick, but I couldn't tell you because it may have, how do you say, shattered your confidence. They are the electricians here at Craven Cottage, and they were trying to work out because the scoreboard only goes up to 9. That is true. That is true.
And mixing with royalty too, Kielty. I mean, fun run with Prince William.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best days of my life, doing the Sport Relief Mile with Prince William, until I had to go back to Belfast and explain why I'd become such a two-faced arse-kissing, Brit-loving... But what was really weird, it's very surreal when you're you know, a Catholic from Northern Ireland, and you're lined up on the mile, and you're lined up here, and Prince William's here, and Gordon Ramsay's here, and Sebastian Coe's got the starting pistol, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, Paddy from Northern Ireland, future King of England, gun. You know, a few years ago, you might have... And what was strange about it was Gordon Ramsay, as you know, Gordon is just so competitive that Sebastian Coe and Gordon's arse is like a blur. Gone. And Prince William turns around to me and he goes, are we going to roll that pace? Because he sounds quite a lot like Elvis. And I said, no, it's fine. Right? I said, it's fine. You just run at you know, I said, you're the future King of England. I said, they've got the fun runners behind us. I said, just set the pace, it'll be OK. And so we're jogging up the mile. And I don't know whether can I say this, that I'm jogging up and we're sort of making chit-chat. And it gets to that point where I haven't trained and he hadn't started his Sandhurst training. And we get about 3/4 the way up the mile and no one's overtaken us. And he went, are you tired? And I went, geez, I'm fucked. And he turned around and he went, so am I. Which is great. And I was just like, thank God for that.
Now, in these clubs, of course, nowadays, you'll be putting yourself about a bit because you're 35.
What do you mean? My mum's watching this. What do you mean, putting yourself about a bit?
You're on the market. I mean, you're a bed.
Isn't everybody on the market in a nightclub?
No, you particularly are, because you're a single man.
Yes.
You're 35 years old, and therefore, I would have thought on the prowl. Are you a bed magnet?
You see, I have a mirror in my house, Michael. So I kind of know I'm not. And what's weird about it is that people do treat you differently whenever you're on TV.
Sure, of course.
And I think the proof of the pudding was I actually went to Las Vegas on a stag weekend. This would have been about 18 months ago. And, you know, as you know, the rules of international stag combat are a dozen men turn up at an airport at 4 o'clock, pissed as farts already, and just continue to drink. You know, we get on the plane, would you like a sweet? No, drink. And so, basically, drunk ourselves into oblivion on the first night. And we ended up in a nightclub. And the sad thing about ending up in a nightclub on a stag weekend is that you've got 12 single guys, and you kind of think that you're some sort of hip-hop posse, you know, into the whole sort of yo-yo. And really, if you take a picture, you just look like gay river dance. That's, you know, so white men trying to dance, you're like this. And it just doesn't work. And, you know, you're into the whole hippity-hop and, oh, yeah, I love 50 Pence, the rapper. And it's just wrong. And these 2 girls came up to me, and they, you know, they're quite nice girls, and they introduced themselves, and I was actually quite surprised because not, you know, being on TV in America, and I thought there was someone behind me, and I got chatting to them, and this is how naive I was. Yeah, you're ahead of me here, and I should have known when they introduced themselves. This is Misty, and this is Crystal, And so I'm, you know, they're dancing with me, and I'm, you know, one in front of me, one's behind me, doing the all yo, yo, yo. And then one of them whispers in my ear, right? And she says, "Hey, cowboy, what about us three going back to your room?" And I'm thinking, this is great, right? Because, you know, in the small village I'm from, you know, I'm never done turning down three in a bed. And so I said, yeah, you know, let's go for it. And she turned around and she said, "That'll be $1,000. And I said, "Hang on, love." I said, "Good news and bad news." I said, "You know, the bad news is, you know, I don't pay for it. The good news is I don't charge for it. So it's up to yourself." And then, you see, the problem then was that you know, in moral disgust, I shushed them away, and they gave me this card, and they said, "You call us later on, cowboy." And I got to that stage of the evening, it must have been about 5 in the morning, and, you know, the hotel, the floor's covered in McDonald's wrappers, and, you know, you're trying to take your trousers off, and you're doing that thing where you kind of get them to here, and you can't get them any further, and you're just going round and round and round and round in a circle like this. And the card fell out. And it was a moment of weakness, I have to say. And I'm looking at the card and I'm thinking, you know, I'm in Nevada, therefore it's not illegal. If it's not illegal, it's not immoral. And if it's not immoral, it can't be a sin. So all I have to do now is get myself sobered up to make the call. And I'm trying to get myself, you know, psyched up because, you know, I'd never done this before, and I'm thinking, here we go, here we go. And I go back in the room, and the phone's sitting beside the bed. I'm thinking, here we go, here we go. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. If you B&Q it, here we go. And I'm walking around, I pick the phone up, and I dial the number, and I say, "Hi, I was with two of your girls earlier on this evening, Misty and Crystal. I would like them to come up to the room for chat. I'd like them to bring their toys and their stuff, and whatever they have. My name's Patrick. I've got $1,000. I'm in 419 of the Bellagio Hotel." And the voice at the other end of the phone says, "I don't think that'll be a problem, Mr. Kielty, but I think you need 9 for an outside line."
Sounds good. OK, well, Patrick Kielty, all the best in the future, and thanks for coming tonight. Patrick Kielty.
Thank you very much.